I really want to go to the end of 12 before we get to the beginning of 13, 1243, and just offer a principle. 1243 to 1316 is where I'm going, okay? And the principle that I'm offering is this. God knows the short way, and God knows the long way, okay? God knows the short way, and it's not always the best way to move us ahead. So sometimes He will take us on a way that is not efficient because it's the right way to go. Now, some of you are scratching your head and you're going, what in the world is he talking about? There's a fast way to get to someplace. What is the fastest, most efficient distance between two points? A straight line. And life will never look like that for you. It will always be a meandering, and you're going to say, wait a minute, if I'm following God, how come I don't go bang, right from here to there? I'm talking to the person who God is going to call to a mission field, and you're going to spend 3 years raising the money. And you're going to go, what in the world is going on? I have a burden for these people, and I'm spending 3 years going around. Because God is changing you and getting you ready for where you're going. By the way, meanwhile, God is changing them. If you stepped directly into it, they may not be ready for you. You think you're ready and you think they are, but you don't know them. And so God is working a plan. So let's look at the short way, long way thing. Now, I need to give you the timing. I would put next to verse 43 the word timing. This is the timing of the command. Look at the opening command. It says, the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, this is the ordinance of the Passover. No foreigner is to eat of it. Now stop right there. Something strikes me strange about these words. Before we explore what God was commanding Moses, I have a question. Why offer detailed instructions before you get the people moving out of Pharaoh's way? Why does he not say, all right, let's get out of here, and well, I'll tell you as you run, okay? No, he says, all right, Pharaoh is ready to set you free. He's going to send you, because remember what happens between the last hour and this hour. God sends the Passover, and what is Pharaoh's response? Go, get out of my sight, just go, okay? So at that point, wouldn't you be thinking, all right, we've done 10 plagues. This has really been long and drawn out, 10 generations of slaves. Why don't we just run for the border? But instead of that, God says, all right, stop. Let me give you some instructions. How many of you would be frustrated with that? Ready, set. I need to instruct you. Okay, first, they're not ready to leave. They're not ready to have God lead them anywhere until they're ready to listen. So, one of the things that delays help you with is that you learn to listen to God when He says, don't just do something, stand there. This is the weight of wait. That's what it is. I met many believers who've labored over God's will for some venture or some question. They've been fasting, they've been praying, and they're still not hearing God clearly. What am I supposed to be doing? But it's worth noting that if you're walking in the will of God, you may need to understand that God seldom raises His voice. He mostly talks very quietly, and His words soak into your ears as a whisper, not a shriek. So, the less you think He's saying, the more careful I want you to lean in to listen. It's as if God says, if you're really interested in hearing from me, move everything, every obstacle, every encumbrance, everything that distracts you from me, get it out of the way, then I'll talk to you. While God had the attention of Israel in the miracle of Passover, it's at that moment He used that short attention span to speak words. Sometimes I don't know if you know this, but when you're talking to children, the best way to actually speak to children is actually take their little face, put it in your hands, and bring it right up to your face and speak to them. Why? Because they have the attention span of a gnat, and anything going by has taken part of it away. But if they're focused on you, physical touch will help, and eye contact will help. So God got them right at the Passover, and all these people are dead, and everybody's having funerals, and they're going like this, and He goes, okay, now I got your eyes. Listen to me. Now, I think one of the things that is important is look at the substance of the of the commands that God gave. He gave 4 types of commands. I want you to see what they are. In 1243 to 1316, there are 4 types of commands that are given. The first type are what I would call distinction commands. This is 43 to 51, distinction commands. God essentially said, set apart the feast of Passover, include only those I've specified for it for all your generations. See, that's what, verse 43, this is the ordinance of Passover, no foreigner. Do you see it? Underline, no foreigner. Verse 44, after you have circumcised him. Verse 45, sojourner, hired servant, shall not eat of it. Verse 46, single house. Don't break any bone. Look what God is doing. What he's saying is, I have this new and distinct memorial, and I don't want everybody in the world to do it. I want you guys to do it, and I want you to limit it to the people I tell you to limit it to. I want you to do it my way, with my people, and nobody else. So there are 3 lessons I gather from this. First, we need to include who God includes and exclude who God excludes. That means, in a tolerance at any cost-laden generation, we need to remember that throwing a marker of godliness out because somebody's offended is the wrong way to go. The right way to go, rather, is that love is obedience. Why do you call me Lord and not do the things that I say? Love is not disobedience tolerated. Love is obedience and surrender. The second thing that I notice is we need to serve an eviction notice on a lot of stuff left over from our old life. We need to evict it from us. That principle can even be more closely applied to my own life. Anything that doesn't please God, anything that doesn't honor God needs to be shown the door. Things that are hindering my being properly aligned with the Spirit of God. You can't bring in the treasure until you take out the trash. Okay? If your life is filled with trash, it won't be filled with treasure. It's that simple. You can only put so much in a dorm room. The third thing I notice, and this is on a more positive note, when I'm reading these verses all the way down to verses 50, say 51, I think careful observation of the text about the meal reveals that God was signaling a family relationship in the observance. Those who are part of a family are to take part as sons. That's the word in verse 42, as sons. God's work in people started through the family. He illustrates his relationship with his son. It's interesting to me because the other thing that we learn, what we learn from chapter 12 is God has this big thing about blood. What we learn from the end of chapter 12 is God has this big thing about telling the story through family. If I were the enemy, I'd attack blood and I'd attack family. That's what I would do. And I'd pound blood and pound family. Pound blood, pound family. Because then even if the gospel is being preached, people don't know what a heavenly father is or his son is. They don't have any context for a family. And we go another generation doing what we're doing. And most of the people you're going to talk to will not even be able to tell you what the definition of a family really is. They're going to say people that just love each other. For now. Until they don't. And they're with somebody else. And that's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to talk about a relationship with God that never ends when they've never seen a relationship that never ends. My kids' generation treats marriage like we treated dating. I'm with someone until I'm not with them. That meant for us, we broke up. For them, it means divorce, which they assume is about at the level of a breakup. Why? Because when marriage moves from being a heavenly covenant to an earthly contract, then you can break it up like an earthly contract. But if it's a heavenly covenant, then you got a lot of problems walking away because there's stuff that are stuck together. By the way, the problem with sexuality has a lot to do with blood. In the Bible, these two things are connected. I won't tell you about it until we get to the law, but they are connected. Your sexuality and God's prohibitions of sexuality has nothing to do with the enjoyment of sex. It has to do with blood. That's what it has to do with. That identity, separation, and holiness. God has a thing about blood. And he connects family to blood. In other words, your blood comes from your family, through the biology of your sexuality, which is family. The blood and family are tied together. When you disconnect blood and family, you wound the society at a fundamental level. If you didn't catch that, you'll catch it later. Here's what I want you to see. Everybody in the family, verse 47, everybody in the family is told to participate. It's not left to your choice. If you're part of God's program, then you do what God says to do. That's as simple as I can say it. So he just says, all the congregation of Israel are to celebrate this. Well, but I'm not really feeling it. Yeah, well, that's okay. If you're part of the congregation of Israel, you celebrate this. Well, I'm just not sure are you part of the congregation of Israel or not? If you are, then you celebrate this. Now, the first commands are distinction commands. Do you understand why these are called distinction commands? They make the people of God distinct from the rest of the world. That means that in your life, God has certain distinction commands. There are things that belong within the circle of believers that make you different than everyone else. That's why Peter says, be holy as I am holy. You're called to be distinct. So one of the questions every believer has to ask themselves is my life distinct from the world around me? If I look like they look, laugh at what they laugh at, do what they do, how am I different? Is there distinctiveness? Now, the second kind of command. These are what I would call devotion commands. This is 13:1 and 2, devotion commands. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, sanctify to me every firstborn, the first offspring of every womb among the sons of Israel, both of man and of beast, that belongs to me. The word set apart means to devote the firstborn of man and beast. Why? Why does God say we are to devote that firstborn child to him? What does the verse say? Look at the end of verse 2. Why do you give him the firstborn of every womb?
It belongs to me.
It belongs to me. A firstborn child is different than all the other children in the house. In God's economy, the firstborn child you have to buy back. In other words, you have to specifically, as you begin to go from being a couple to being parents, make a change in your life. Something has to happen. Now, we're going to talk about more specificity of what that is later, but the important thing is believers tend to lose their enthusiasm the further they get into get from their lost life. What happens is when they're first saved, they have a lot of zeal, right? Then as they get into being a believer, does that zeal go up or does that zeal go down in most believers? God told them to recall the beginning story every new generation. Start again with every new generation. You just had a new baby? Stop. A new family is about to begin. Make a big deal of it. Because that first child is the opening of the womb and the beginning of God's new thing in that new family unit. There's something very special about that moment. Unfortunately, Christians don't do what Jews do. Jews have a lot of celebrations. Christians, they sort of, they treat the first child like the second child. In fact, we literally try to say they're all the same. They're not. In God's economy, the firstborn child, you have to initiate things that now, we do it in some ways, like you go out and buy a car seat that you're going to use for the next 3 children. I mean, we do. You all of a sudden go, so there are some ways in which we do it, but there are other ways in which we don't. Let me move on. God wanted the first of everything. He bought the people. He paid for the people. He paid for all of them, and he wanted them to remember it. So what he did was he said, if you have a firstborn male, it costs you 5 shekels, according to Numbers 18:16. Firstborn males cost you 5 shekels. When a baby's born, first thing they do is collect. It's going to cost you 5 shekels. Moses, in turn, gave the people some commands like this. And we're going to talk about those later. Does that sound weird that God would say you have to buy back the child that just popped out your womb? Why would he do that? And I want you to stop now. Talk to me. Why would God say you have to part with cash when I give you your first child?
Remember that the child's sin, not yours.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's true. What would it do for you to know that God is expecting you to make payment when this child is delivered? how would that change your view of the child as the child is forming within the mother?
It would make it a bit more, I guess, one of the words you could use would be precious to you because you have to pay for it. I mean, it's not just something that you could just have sex and then you get this baby. No, you have to actually pay for it.
Here's the interesting thing. Who do you suppose the economy was largely based on in terms of the earning potential within the family?
Firstborn.
No, I mean, of the man and woman who got married, which of the two of them is going to bring home the bacon? In a non-biblical way of saying it. Who's going to be responsible for the 5 shekels? The male. Why? Because she's already going to pay. What is he doing? Listen, guys, I'm pro-life because God says the baby was his before the baby was even born. That's the point of this. That baby's mine. Numbers 18:16 is your verse. If you're a pro-life person, you're pro-life because the baby belongs to him before the baby's born. You owe me 5 shekels when the baby's born. Why? Because it's mine. You owe me 5 shekels. And here's what I want you to know right here. 13:1 and 2. Sanctify the firstborn's mine.
How much for the shekel out?
It changes. It's flexible with the economy. How much is the dollar worth? Well, it depends on when you were around. It's worth $1, but it depends on what it's worth in actual buying power. And yes, I do, but I'm going to hold you back on doing because I'm going to do shekel weights over time. Okay. We actually do that as part of the course. Let me suggest this. You understand what I said about the unborn child? The Bible, people keep talking to me like, well, you know, the Bible, it doesn't say anything about abortion. Of course it does. It says the child is mine. You don't have the right to take my stuff. How can that not be clear? So I'm not running around pro-life trying to make other people stop killing millions of babies just because I want to stop them from being able to have sex at will and rid themselves of the consequence. That's not really my angle. If the Bible didn't say it was wrong, I wouldn't care. I don't care what everybody else is doing. I don't have time to care about what I can barely keep up on what I'm doing. You should see the mess in my office right now. The point is that when the Bible says, look, this is mine, and you start killing that which belongs to my God, then I get offended. Because it's not yours. Okay? Let's move on to a third type of command. So what we had was a distinction command, and the distinction command from 43 to 51 gave its way to a devotion command, a devoted command, or a votive command in 13:1 and 2. 13:3 to 10 is memorial commands. Now, I want you to see what the memorial commands are. In verse 3, the memory of the powerful work of God would be seen in a meal. That's what he says. I want you to remember that I brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. By a powerful hand, the Lord brought you out of this place. In other words, I want you to remember something. Now, how do you do that? You do that through having a meal. So the Passover meal becomes the moment of memory. It's not enough to say, okay, I'll remember you. That's different than saying, I'll pray for you. Because when you pray for me, you actually have to do something. Otherwise, they just sort of flash across your memory. God says, I don't just want a memorial, I want it to be a fixed memorial. Now, he also says that leaven was natural and unleavened bread is rushed and unnatural. So what does he say? What kind of bread do you eat at Passover, and what's the feast that follows Passover for the week? Feast of what?
Unleavened bread.
Unleavened bread. Unleavened bread. In other words, the symbol or the memorial of doing what God has done is to use the unnatural, not the natural. In our times, naturalists have taken over our schools and they say, but it's natural to do that. God says, yeah, I know that, and that's why I want you to do the unnatural thing. I want your bread to be rushed, hastened, not raised, not leavened. Not like the bread you eat the rest of the year. Why? Because this is a memorial for me. When we do memorials, can I suggest that when you have celebrations, you'll get as much out of it as you put into it? I have couples that get married, and in their first or second or third year of marriage, they'll say, I'll say, how was your Christmas? It just didn't feel like Christmas. Well, did you put up a tree? No. Did you decorate the house? Nah, not really. Did you make cookies? No. No wonder it didn't feel like Christmas. Memorials only work when you put something into them. When you do something to make it special. The reason that we bring out a big cake at a birthday with candles all over it is because we don't do that every other day. If every day they came dancing out with a cake with candles, it wouldn't be special. Okay? Notice in verse 4, God is deeply interested in the timing of the event. I think this is interesting. He says, on this day in the month of Aviv, Aviv is the word for spring, you are about to go forth. It shall be when the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanite, Hittite, Amorite, Hivite, Jebusite, which he swore to your fathers to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, that you shall observe this rite in this month. So ultimately, God says, I care about when you do it. And then he goes on this thing about cleaning out the leaven out of the camp. Not only do I not want you to have leaven in your bread, I want you to clean out your camp so that there's no dust bunnies under your bed. We get spring cleaning from this, by the way. That's where it comes from. It comes actually originally from Judaism. And the idea of every spring cleaning out everything. And at Passover, if you live in Jerusalem, outside the houses, all along the streets, in every neighborhood, there would be little piles of burning dust. Because everybody gets all their dust bunnies, piles them up out front, and burns it as a symbol that they've cleaned their house, okay? All the stores have to get rid of anything with yeast in them. They're not allowed to have any yeast products in them. You can only have unleavened bread. That's the only thing you can have during Passover. And if you go to Burger King, you will get these potato muffins that they put your burger on that are absolutely horribly disgusting. Absolutely no one on earth likes them. But they keep serving burgers, and you can't serve a burger without putting it on something, so they make these things out of potato, which have no leaven in them, and they're just like eating chalk dust with meat in it. It's absolutely horrible. Anyway, the point is that when you're reading this, God is interested in the time, but he's interested in how the cleaning goes in the house. These memorial commands are, let me read it this way. Memorialize our deliverance in a week-long festival, and do so by cleaning the house completely and eating bread that doesn't have any leaven. That's basically 3 through 10 right there. Okay? Why do you suppose God would get all into house cleaning? I mean, why would it be important every spring? All right, stop. This is going to be the beginning of the year for you. Remember, your year starts, your sacred year starts with this. Clean your house. What's he doing?
Symbolizing a new start, kind of like cleaning out the trash, really.
Yeah, you know, did anybody here ever have a clean garage? Did you ever have a clean garage? I actually don't believe I ever actually have had a clean garage. I think maybe not in my life.
Yeah.
I think I have a deep internal longing for a clean garage. I really do. I like things clean and simple. If you go to the new part of our house, the part that Dottie and I stay in, it's very minimalist furniture. There's hardly anything there except for what we need. There's nothing, extra surfaces, extra tables mean you pile stuff on them. So if you don't have surfaces, you just put it away. Why? Because there's nowhere else to put it. And we just started to create a minimalist environment. Steve Jobs came up with one single button. Why? Because it forces everybody into a simplistic system. I love that. Look at my garage. It's baffling. Okay, let me go to 11 to 16 because there's a fourth type of command, and I don't want to get caught up in these forever. The fourth type of command is it's a little bit different than a distinction or a devotion command. This is called a dedication command. The dedication command in 11 to 16. Let me read 11 to 16 in the Randy Reading in the White Spaces version that squashes it down to a sentence. Are you ready? Devote the firstborn of your children and your animals to the Lord, remembering that they are the purchase price of the redemption of slavery. I want you to give, every first offspring of your donkey, redeem it with a lamb. If you don't have one, break its neck. So here's what he said. Make your donkey a John Deere tractor. Okay? You go out, you finally get to the place where you get a tractor and you pay me an offering for getting your tractor, or you blow it up. Everyone is prepared to sacrifice somebody else's stuff, but not the ones you worked for. So if I give it to you, I want you to hand back to me a portion of what I gave you so that you know it was mine, not yours. That's, by the way, the offering principle when we pass the plate every week. You give back a portion of what God gave to you to remind him that the part that's still in your wallet is his. It's not yours. You don't have anything. You were born naked, and you'll go out in whatever we put you in, inside the box or whatever. Stick in the oven, I don't know. The point is that the bottom line is that you don't own anything. Your house isn't your house. Somebody else is going to live in it after you. And for most of us, somebody lived in it before us. It's ours right now. You're a renter on the planet, and I need you to know that. And everything that comes into your life is there because I put it there. Don't lose track of that, because if you start owning stuff, you're going to start thinking you deserve stuff. And when you think you deserve stuff, you're going to start pushing me around like I'm trying to take your stuff. People will say to you, I don't want to come to God because if I come to God, if I come to Jesus, he's going to make me give up stuff. You don't own it. It's not yours, and it never has been. You've lived a lie that the stuff that's in your life was there because you put it there. The Lord gives and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Job said it. Okay, go down to verses 17 and 20. Let's finish this up. We'll go to a break. Here's an example of some leadership. The command is given, okay? God leads the people out. And now we're going da-da-da-da. Now we all start walking toward the Red Sea. Okay, we all doing it? We're all walking toward the Red Sea. Now, look what happens. God has to, the very first thing he does is God protects us from us. Okay? So it says in verse 17, God led them the long way to help them overcome the fear they knew they would have. Where do I see that? It says, when Pharaoh had let the people go, God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, but which is, would you put in your Bible, the short way, the direct route. They didn't go the direct route into the land. God did not lead them that way, even though it was near. He says, the direct way. For God said the people might change their mind when they see war and return to Egypt. Listen to me. God took them the long way instead of taking them the short way because they weren't ready to fight a war yet because they didn't know how. You can't, the other team's coming at you with their spears and bows and you're like making bricks because it's what you know how to do. That's not going to work, okay? You can't build a wall that fast. So, they don't know how to do anything yet. So the route chosen by God was southeast towards Sinai. Why? Because he wanted to avoid a militaristic confrontation with the Egyptians, and he knew that they would look at this and see the people coming and panic and all run back to Egypt. Now, look at verse 18. Hence God led the people around by the way of the wilderness to the Red Sea, and the sons of Israel went up in martial array in the land of Egypt. Here's what the irony is. There's a play on words here. Martial array are the words for they marched as an army. He says they're not yet an army, so I took them the long way and taught them to march. That's really what it says. So God gave them a chance to spread out and get organized as the journey began because they weren't ready to fight a war yet. They didn't know how to walk together. You can't fight people if you can't even march together. They had to learn how to be a marching band before they could ever shoot a gun. If you understand how I mean that. All right, look at verse 19. Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for he had made the sons of Israel solemnly swear, saying, God will surely take care of you, and you shall carry my bones from here with you. I want you to see that God gave them time necessary to keep their promises. Part of the thing, God delayed them. He took them a long way because he needed to give them time to get together, but he delayed them from leaving because they had promises they made and they needed to finish their promises. Now, the other thing is in verse 20, it says they set out from Sukkot and encamped at Etam in the edge of the wilderness. God gave them a glimpse of the journey before they got into the wilderness. You don't know this, but from Sukkot to Etam, the wilderness is not that bad. This is like junior wilderness. Okay? I've been there. I've walked the whole thing. And here's what I can tell you is, if I had a choice, I'd much rather stay between Sukkot and Etam, where you're pretty close to the water and you can still get some food off of some trees. You go down a little bit further and you're going to find yourself in a wilderness. Think Afghanistan. Nothing, okay? So the truth is that God took them in a junior wilderness before he took them in a senior wilderness. Does everybody understand what I'm saying? So Here's the thing. Listen to verse 21. The Lord was going before them in a pillar of cloud by day to lead them on the way, and a pillar of fire by night that would give them light, that they might travel by day and by night. Was the pillar of fire and cloud with them through the whole 40 years? No. It was selective. It was a GPS movement device. When God wanted to move the people from here to there, and he wanted to move them day and night, he gave them the ability to see at night with storms, because what is a pillar of fire? That's the Hebrew word for lightning. He lit up the sky with lightning across it so that they could walk across, so everything was lighted. Now, why doesn't God do things the short and easy way? Why didn't he walk them right into the land of the Philistines, right through the Gaza Strip, and right into the land? They could have been there. Frankly, it would have taken them, with all the people all together, about 3 or maybe maximum 4 days. They could have taken the whole group of Israel in 3 days and been inside the land. Why in the world take them the long way and go southeast instead of going northeast and take them a long way around? Because they weren't ready yet. Now, let's step away from 13 and ask this question. Why does God put you going the long way so much of the time? Because you're not ready yet. And so sometimes you think, man, I am so ready. I just want to be married. I want to have kids. I want to get my family started. And then you really work hard to build a relationship, and then it falls apart, and you go, God, I was looking forward to this relationship being the one. And he said, I have one for you, but it wasn't this one, and you're not ready yet. And what I really needed to do to get you ready is wound you badly. Because that's when you're going to be ready. I always worry about people that have children and they grow up and they're like really wonderful, because what happens is people then think that they're good at it. Can I tell you, you can do everything right and they can come out wrong? It's true. You can do it all right and they can come out wrong. You can do it all wrong and they can come out right. What it usually is more a mixed bag. You do some things right, some things wrong. They come out some things right, some things wrong. That's more what it is. Don't own the parts. You're temporary on the planet. You're a renter here, and everything you have belongs to the Lord. And what you do plays a role in your own obedience, but you're not the master of your own destiny. Ultimately, you're here when God tells you you are here. Why does he take me the long way? Because God's not in a hurry. He's sculpting my path because he knows exactly what he needs it to be.